Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. We are joined by Reverend Carlene Appel again from New Day Pastoral Counseling Services in the greater Chicago area, but helping those worldwide. And her guest today will be Detective Rich Wistocki. Now, for the next hour, we strongly encourage all parents and their children who are using the internet or social media, chat rooms, online games, to really watch this program. It's very important. Reverend Carlene will be talking about the tragedy of human trafficking, specifically child sex trafficking during the first half of the show. Now, in the second half of the show, we'll be joined by our guest here. Again, that's Detective Rich Wistocki, who spent 22 years of his 30 years with the Naperville, Illinois Police Department, really fighting cyber pedophiles and predators who prey upon children. And actually, he got 2 laws passed. We're going to talk about that as well, to protect children in the state of Illinois. And again, he's here to talk about the, cyber sextortion and how easily, kids can get trapped. He's going to talk to us about the safety to help you and your children to know what to expect and, of course, how to protect them most importantly. So let's start off with Reverend Carlene. Can you please explain specifically what human trafficking actually is?
Well, human trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor commercial sex act. So every year, millions of men, women, and children are trafficked all over the world, including right here in the United States. Some people think that we don't have any trafficking here. Oh, we do. We do. And it happens in everywhere from the cities to the rural areas and those nice suburbs that you think are so safe. Homeland Security says any community, victims can be any age, right down to infants, just a few months old. And I watched a takedown of that. It was so heartbreaking to see, a mother having her kids on the camera doing sex act to earn money. This was a poor family, but they rescued those children, which was good. So so any race, gender, nationality, and traffickers might use violence, manipulation, false promises of well-paying jobs, romantic relationships to lure victims into trafficking situation. And you have, sometimes you have language barriers or fear of law enforcement. That frequently keeps victims from seeking help. So it makes human trafficking a hidden crime. Trafficking can happen in, like I said, in a nice suburb, rural area, anywhere. So traffickers use force, fraud, anything, coercion to lure their victims. They force them into labor or sexual exploitation. They look for people who are susceptible for a variety of reasons. Psychological, emotional vulnerability, and the kids definitely are in that group. Economic hardship, lack of a social safety net, natural disasters, political instability, all that stuff. Trauma can be caused by the traffickers. It can be so great that many may not identify themselves as victims, that they fear for their lives. So let me talk about some of the myths, that go along. Some people think that trafficking doesn't occur in the United States, just other countries. No, human trafficking exists in every single country, nationwide. And so again, cities, suburbs, rural towns, even your own community. Another myth is human trafficking victims, they're only foreign-born individuals and poor people. No, that's not true. Human trafficking can be any age, any race, any gender, any nationality, any income level. Whatever your socioeconomic group, the socioeconomic group is a social standing or class of an individual group. So it's often measured by a combination of education, income, and occupation. Human trafficking, the myth is it's only sex trafficking. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, but it's not the only type. Forced labor is another type, involves exploitation of people, Victims are found in legitimate and illegitimate labor industries, including sweatshops, massage parlors, agriculture, restaurants, hotels, domestic service. And another myth is individuals must be forced or coerced into commercial sex acts to be victims of human trafficking. The fact of that is, under federal law in the US, any minor under the age of 18 who is induced to perform commercial sexual acts is a victim of human trafficking. It doesn't matter whether they're forced or coerced. The traffickers, they're really good at spotting empty spaces in people. It could be emotional, mental, could be physical. So they zero right in. They're like cult leaders. They zero right in on those things. So, and there's another myth that says human trafficking and human smuggling are the same. It's not the same. Trafficking is based on exploitation. It doesn't require movement across any borders. Smuggling is based on movement. Means you move a person from another country across the border with that person's consent. So they're violating immigration laws doing that. So it can turn into trafficking, though, especially if the smuggler uses force or fraud, coercion to hold people against their will for the purpose of labor or sexual exploitation. Under federal law, again, every minor induced to engage in commercial sex is a victim of human trafficking. So, and the last myth I want to talk about is that human trafficking victims will attempt to seek help when in public. No, that's not true, because they're worried about retribution from traffickers, danger to their families, especially when it's gang related or drug cartels. They will kill a whole family. And so, they're kind of trapped in that. And so they may have their identification documents taken from them too. So they're not allowed to talk to anybody without supervision. They're coached on how to respond to inquiries from others, including the police or other authority figures, and they'll tell people, oh, the police are in on this too. And so they keep people from doing that, reporting it. So, and a lot of times where people are housed is just terrible. There might not be running water, electricity. There might be a whole bunch of people sharing a small space. And so let's do some statistics. 24.9 million people are victims of forced labor. 16 million people are trafficked for forced labor in the private economy. And there is forced labor in some really wealthy neighborhoods. Nobody asks Myra, is she doing okay? Or how's her family? They want domestic servants. And so 4.8 million people are trafficked for forced sexual exploitation. 4.1 million people are trafficked for forced labor in state-imposed forced labor. So it's estimated 20.9 million people are trafficked worldwide. And let's go over to the sex trafficking. 3.8 million adults are trafficked or forced for sexual exploitation. 1 million children are trafficked for commercial sexual exploitation. So yeah, it's a huge problem. So yeah. And my next thing is caught on camera. And I watched this. It was hard to watch. There was a there, and this went viral on Twitter. Let me grab that. But anyway, so there was a young woman standing there, and the guy with her, he all of a sudden punched her right in the face, and he grabbed her by her hair and her clothes, and he dragged her over to his car. And people were watching this. People stepped in. This was in Plano, Texas. Okay, at one of the nice strip malls. And so he picked her up by her hair, by her clothes, and he dragged her over to the car. He threw her in the passenger side. He started to go around, but she got out. She was good. She was really moving fast, but he went back and he tried to put her back in. She got out. This went on for like three or four times he tried, and she finally escaped. And then the bystanders stepped in and helped her out. And that man, he was convicted and sentenced to, I'm trying to think how many years. It was like 50 years or trafficking that girl. And that girl was trafficked for a year. She was either 16 or 17 when he trapped her in that. And so this went on for a year. So it's awful. Yeah. And so I was reading the article too. I mean, I watched it. It was awful. So the perpetrator was Ricky Stevenson. He was from Mesquite. So it was in Legacy Drive. So anybody out there who's listening who is from Plano, you know where that is. So that's the Legacy. Yes, Shops at Legacy. So it was in the parking lot, but he was apprehended. Yeah, that's right. She was prostituted by him at age 16 and 17 at the time of that assault. So he was sentenced, I was close, 59 years in prison for aggravated kidnapping. So it's really a parent's worst nightmare, you know, and you think you want to keep your kids safe. And you know, like this young lady prostituted by a human trafficker. And now Collin County District Attorney, because Plano's in Collin County, Greg Willis, he said in a press release, we've now secured justice by forcing that trafficker to pay the consequence. So we thank the jury for a sentence that's both strong and just. So, but that's happened on January, and it went viral. It recirculated on June 26th, and it got over 2.6 million views. So, but like I said, it was hard to watch. It was awful to see that done to her. So, yeah. And here's a real life victim. She was trafficked sexually. She is a highly intelligent woman. She was from Indonesia, but she had a degree in finance, and she worked at an international bank in Indonesia. She was an analyst, a trader. But in 1998, Indonesia was hit by the Asian financial crisis. And the following year, the country got thrown into political turmoil. So she lost her job. And so she had a daughter. And so she came to the US. You know, there was an ad for like hotel cleaning. And she was 24 at the time. She had no idea what she was getting into. So when she ended up meeting the people, there was other women too, and they made them take a picture where they were all smiling like they were happy. And the traffickers will do that so the families will stop worrying about them. They'll say, oh, look at this nice job they had. So but she had, you know, she was looking for work overseas. So she ended up being trafficked in New York and Pennsylvania and Nevada, and it was awful. So just a couple hours after she arrived in the US, she was forced to have sex because they took her to basically a whorehouse. And when the door opened up, she saw a little girl. She said she maybe was 12 or 13. She was lying on the ground screaming, and a group of men took turns kicking her. So she was bleeding from her nose. She was screaming in pain. And one of the men grinned and started fooling her with a baseball bat in front of her. So basically intimidating. So, you know, so she was trafficked all over the place. And traffickers were Indonesian, Taiwanese, Malaysian, Chinese, American. And they continued to weigh in on the weekends. They they said, oh, one of the men had a police badge. So to this day, she said, I don't know if he was a real policeman or not. You know, there's a few dirty cops. Those cops are really good, but you know, there's that small.
There's always some that are rogue. Yep.
Yeah. So they said, oh, you owe us $30,000, so you're going to have to work it off. Debt was $100 at a time, you know, per man. So she was taken up and down Interstate 95 to brothels, apartment buildings, hotels, casinos on the East Coast. Rarely two days in the same place. Never knew where she was going. So, and so they drugged her with cocaine, crystal meth, weed. They made her take drugs at gunpoint. So you really don't have a choice. But she said, on the other hand, it made things more bearable as she was raped over and over again. So she drank beer and whiskey because that's all there was. And she didn't even know you could drink the tap water in the United States. And so, you know, not very good food. She was locked in an attic in a brothel in Connecticut. And then she went to Brooklyn one day. She was with a 15-year-old Indonesian girl, and who became a friend. And then the trafficker twisted her hand to get her to do what he wanted, and she screamed. And so eventually somebody rescued her. So the FBI, Homeland Security, the police, from you know, the local police. And so now she goes around and she talks about this to help other people out. And so I'm going to switch over to child sex trafficking and Virginia Beach man. March 20th, 2021, Jason Woolwine, 44, produced a video of himself sexually abusing a 4-year-old victim. And during the investigation, they found the child pornography, and then there was another guy involved. He was 70 years old, Stanley Zielinski, was of Newport News. He confessed to the FBI agent that he and Woolwine were romantically involved, and they shared their sexual fantasies about children over instant messaging application services, and showed federal agents the video he received from Woolwine with the toddler. You know, so that toddler was in that guy's house. Yeah. Now, Woolwine tried to use anti-forensic and evidence destruction software, but you know, the FBI has the software for that, and so they were able to retrieve the images of the child pornography from his cell phone, and including the self-produced video with that young boy. It was a 4-year-old boy. So Zielinski, the 70-year-old, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of receipt of child pornography. He received a sentence of 7 years imprisonment. And then on November 5th of last year, Woolwine pleaded guilty to production of child pornography. He received a sentence of 27 years. So Assistant U.S. Attorney Peter Ossoff prosecuted that case. So that was brought as part of Project Safe Childhood. And that's a nationwide initiative launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice. So they wanted to combat the epidemic of child exploitation and abuse. So they have a U.S. Attorney's Offices and Department of Justice's Child Exploitation and Obscenity section. So they have marshals, federal, state, local rescues. So they want to locate, apprehend, and prosecute these individuals who exploit children via the internet. And they want to also identify and rescue victims. So people who want to know about Project Child Safehood, it's www.justice.gov/PSC. And so FBI's Norfolk Children and Child Exploitation Task Force. That's composed of FBI agents and detectives from Chesapeake Police Department, Hampton Police Division, Newport News Police Department, federal agents from Homeland Security, and they're charged with investigating and bringing federal charges against individuals who engage in that kind of awful stuff. And if somebody needs help, they just have to do 1-800-CALL FBI, and somebody will help them out. So let's talk about what is child sex trafficking. That is a form of child abuse that occurs when a child under 18 is advertised, solicited, or exploited through a commercial sex act. Commercial sex act is the exchange of anything of value, money, drugs, place to stay, because some kids are thrown out of their house. So these guys and sometimes gals hang around bus stops and homeless shelters and all kinds of places, schools, so you name it, they hang around. So they can be anybody who profits from selling a child for sex to a buyer, including family members, foster parents, gangs, perceived trusted adults, romantic partners. In some cases, there's no identified trafficker, and it's the person buying sex from the child who is exploiting the child's vulnerabilities. For example, if a child runs away, a buyer may exploit this child's need for food and shelter by offering to provide that in exchange for sex. That's how it starts. And that goes, the things is called like boyfriending. So, and it's kind of like, what's the word I want? Love bombing. A lot of people know that word. So in many situations, due to the trauma and manipulation from the trafficker, survivors will feel like they're responsible for their own victimization. In some cases, they'll even defend their abuser, because it's kind of like the
mental abuse.
Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. So in some cases, it's important to remember to meet survivors where they're at. Understand their victimization, ensure their rights and access to services as a victim. So in 2021, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they received more than 17,200 reports of child sex trafficking from all 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, every type of community, cities, small towns, tribal land. In 2021, of the 25,000 children reported missing who had run away, 1 in 6 were likely trafficking victims. 19% were in the care of social services or child protective services and were reported missing. Child sex trafficking reported to them includes male, female, and transgender kids. So they have programs to help with that, but I want to quickly, because I know we're coming to the end of our first half here. Boy, that's fast. So here's some things to look for. So parents out there, and kids you listen up to, but parents especially, teachers especially, coaches, all of you, child sex traffickings are often unable to self-identify as victims or disclose their abuse because of fear, because of shame, loyalty to their abusers. It is not a child's responsibility to ask for help. It's up to the professionals. It's up to the trusted adults in these kids' lives to recognize the signs, okay? Here's red flags, physical indicators, sign of sexual or physical abuse, neglect, such as malnourishment, unaddressed or chronic medical, dental issues, STIs, close association with an overly controlling adult, recovered at hotels, street tracks, truck stops, strip clubs, other locations where trafficking or commercial sex is known to occur. They'll have secret cell phones or apps providing multiple cell phone numbers because, if mom or dad or somebody else finds phone, they got a separate one. So they're in possession of material goods, inconsistent with their access to money or socioeconomic status, in possession of bulk sexual paraphernalia, condoms, lubricant, living out of suitcases at motels, in a car, other evidence of, housing insecurity, unexplained access to cash, tattoos or branding. Sometimes the traffickers will brand somebody, and references to traveling to other cities, drug dependency, frequent abuse of party drugs, and that's your GHB, Rofall, ketamine, MDMA, which is ecstasy and methamphetamine. Behavioral indicators, really quick: chronically running away from home, unexplained absences from school, constantly sleeping in class, stops engaging in normal activities they had enjoyed, athletics, clubs. They abruptly disconnect from their family and friends. Significant change in behavior, including their online activity. They avoid answering questions or lets others speak for them. They appear frightened, annoyed, resistant, or belligerent to authority figures. They're reluctant to disclose true identity or personal information, or they have a secret online profile. References online escort apps, dating websites, apps, uses language or emojis associated with prostitution, such as Trick, the live game. So 1-800 The Lost is to the National Center for Missing or Exploited Children. So anyway, so 1-800 The Lost. And I am Reverend Carlene Appel from New Day Pastoral Counseling Services in the Chicago area, www.newdaypcs.org, and you can contact me on that. So how's that?
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll take a quick break here. We'll be right back.
Do you want to stop yelling? Do you want your kids to listen? Hi, I'm Holly, the cheerleader of moms. I help overwhelmed and overworked Christian moms find peace in their home. I'm a former screamer and yeller, and I have found a better way. Let me teach you how I stopped yelling. I got my kids to listen, and my home is happier and more peaceful than ever. Parenting is hard. There's no reason to do it alone. Contact me at hollydaviscoaching.com.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Hello, my name is Dr. Robert Shaw. I'm a clinical mental health counselor, pastor, university professor, and an author of 6 books dealing with human core longings and how to meet those in healthy ways. If you are struggling with mental health issues, or your organization or your church or your group is looking to better integrate meaningful relationships, contact me at rbshaw.net. rbshaw.net, and I will be glad to come and provide a conference, seminar, and speaking engagement to bring people together to integrate spirituality, relationship building skills, and psychological truths that allow people to have meaningful understandings and meaningful relationships. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Reverend Carlene Appel, we are joined once again, and we're excited to have her here to talk about a very important topic. And unfortunately, it's happening to so many people. Reverend Carlene has been sharing what sex trafficking is, human adult children, and unfortunately, it happens more than we think. And yes, even to adults. I want to also remind everyone we're going to be joined by Detective Rich Wistocki. I guess we're still waiting for him to join in on the show. In the meantime, would you mind telling us a little bit about him and who's going to be joining us shortly?
He is a 22-year, or actually a 30-year veteran of the Naperville Police Department. 22 of those years were spent catching cyber predators of children, and He does. He goes all over the country now, talks to students and their parents about being safe online, and he did a TEDx talk, and it was a really good talk. I know I sent you a link to it. Yeah, so he fought cyber pedophiles, predators. He got 2 laws passed in Illinois to protect children. So he's going to be talking about cyber sextortion and how kids can be safe online, what parents can do to protect them. So,
And how many years have you known him for?
let's see. I met him, I think, over a year or 2 ago, because I do work with the police as the police chaplain, and also involved in reducing the stigma for police and first responders to go and get mental health help. And so this kind of just naturally rolled in, protecting children. And I was so impressed by his presentation. Let me see. Give me a second. I'm going to see.
Yeah, triple check. I'm assuming you sent him the proper link to get in. So hopefully he'll be joining us in a second. In the meantime, let's remind everyone, New Day Pastoral Services. She's in the greater Chicago area. And again, we're here today with Reverend Carlene Appel, and she's talking in regards to the unfortunate tragedy of human sex trafficking and human trafficking. And, there's so much that can still and needs to be done. And unfortunately, it's still happening. You would think in this day and age, it wouldn't happen as much. And statistically, again, how many people are affected? You mentioned before?
Oh, let's see. Are you talking about just sex trafficking?
Yeah.
Okay. 4.8 million people trafficked for sexual exploitation.
Wow.
And 3.8 million adults are trafficked for forced sexual exploitation. 1 million children are trafficked for commercial sexual exploitation. So, yeah, it's a huge problem. And 1-800-THE-LOST is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And if you call them, they will take your call. They'll follow up on it. Whatever the abuse is, if it's physical, sexual, whatever. But if you have a runaway child, for child sex trafficking, they will make sure that gets taken care of. So let me see. Yeah, I sent him the link a couple times. I'm wondering if he's having trouble.
Do you want to give him a call?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Couldn't hurt. Yeah, just to make sure everything's okay. We could always send it to him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I sent him the link and twice. So
all right.
I'm hoping he got it.
All right. In the meantime, I'm just going to tell everyone a little bit about yourself. You began your ministry career back in 1994, earned your Master of Divinity degree, and that was in 2001 from Northern Baptist Theological Seminary, which is now Northern Seminary. And that's, of course, in Lombard, Illinois. An ordained minister in the American Baptist Churches USA denomination since 2001. Clearly experienced, and also has served as a senior adult pastor, hospital chaplain, hospice chaplain for 15 years, solo church pastor, and more. She's also trained as a first responder, and we've talked about the importance of that in CPR and some past shows, and founded also a chaplain corps for the specialized interagency response team known as CERT, and that's for the Henry County, Illinois Sheriff's Department. Served as its coordinator, recruiting and training local pastors to respond to WMD incidents and natural disasters. even experienced as a suicide interventionist and trained with the Weapons of Mass Destruction, that's WMD, and also a WMD incident commander through the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security, also training and certificate in critical incident stress management. And you are a graduate of the Citizens Police Academy training in the Bloomingdale and Glendale Heights Police Departments, certified emergency response chaplain, and currently also serving as at the Glendale Heights Police Department. So if you're interested in finding more, newdaypcs.org. That's newdaypcs.org. And we're here again with Reverend Carlene Appel. And, you know, we do our podcast each and every week here. And there's some great people who say great things. Carlene is empathetic, caring, strong background in counseling, especially in the area of long-term health issues and elder care. Thank you to the Prices for that. You know, there's so much that she can help you with, also wedding ceremonies and also spiritual counseling. And over the course of the past 3 months, we talked about some great topics. Some really pull on your heartstrings, some are hard to talk about, some, you know, more lighthearted, but it's all part of what she does on a daily basis. And respect that, because it can't be easy on you emotionally, physically, mentally, with all that you handle. So,
well, you know, you just have, you got to be diligent about doing self-care, you know, especially anybody in the caring professions, because you can, it's worse than burnout. It's compassion fatigue. You know, it can ruin a career. And the second church I pastored, it was a wonderful church. And 3 years after I was in a very, a church that, very abusive church. So it took 3 years, but then one day you know, it was sermon. I couldn't write. I'm a prolific writer and sermon preacher. And so I got suicidal. I called my next door neighbor, who was a social worker. She was one of my church members. She took me to hospital, and I spent 72 hours. It was one of the best things I did, actually, but I didn't tell anybody about it for years because I was, you know, it was like a stigma. And then one day I was doing compassion fatigue presentation about 3-4 years ago, and I'm thinking to myself, why are you hiding this? You know, and so I told people about my own, you know, experience with compassion fatigue. So. Yeah, it was it was hard. So it took me a whole year.
yeah.
You know, I'd take a whole year and to do this, and oops. But yeah, sextortion. You know, Rich will talk about it, but sextortion. They will ask, you know, oh, can send me a picture, you know, I'll show you my picture if you show me your picture. You know, they pose as other kids, you know, and there's some chat rooms, you know, like Amigo. Don't go on Amigo, because there are predators who pretend to be teens.
Yeah.
And in those chat rooms, you know, there's no way to trace them because they're anonymous. I'm sure the police can trace them, but Rich, I remember him saying those particular things are hard to trace. But everybody has an IP address, so they can get the you know, they can get the perpetrators. And when he goes and speaks at schools, he will often have kids come up to him and tell him that they're being sextorted, and so he helps them connect with local law enforcement so that they can go after the predators, you know. And what an awful job, you know. I wanted to spend a day with the you know, the cybercrime department where he worked, and he said, absolutely not. There's too much CSAM. CSAM is child sexual abuse material. In order to get a conviction, the detectives not only have to pretend they're, a minor, but they also have to watch, the child sexual abuse happening. And so Rich said the average time that somebody spends as a, cyber detective like that is about 5 years. He did 22, but he had to go to therapy afterwards, therapy, and it saved his life. That's what he told me. But and you'll see those detectives crying because they're seeing kids being sexually abused, and it's a hard job. And I understood when he told me, and I'm glad. I said, can I just interview somebody? Not actually see what they see. But yeah, I know I would have been traumatized. I don't think I could do that job. It's just too hard. So, they have support in place for those detectives so that they can.
And we have
help.
Detective here joining us now. Stand by.
Right. Yeah. Oh, Rich.
All right. Looks like he's coming
Hey,
through.
Rich, there you are.
Hello. How are you guys
Hello. Hi.
Great.
Detective Rich,
Hi.
pleasure to see you. Thank you for
Nice to
joining
see you.
us here on the
Sure.
show. Would you mind just introducing yourself to us, please?
Sure. My name is Detective Rich Wistocki with the Naperville, Illinois Police Department. I had spent 28 years there, and I am now retired. And I run Be Sure Consulting Law Enforcement Cyber Training.
Great. And Reverend, do you want to take the lead here and get his insight and intake on obviously the topic of discussion today?
Yeah, tell us what you do. You go to schools now. I was telling Jill about how difficult it is for detectives to do that job that you did.
Sure.
Working in this. Yeah. Told her about CSAM, and I'm glad that you said no when I asked. But anyway, so talk about what you do in the schools.
Yeah. So a little bit about my career. Like I said, I spent 28 years in Naperville PD. I've arrested over 300 internet predators in my career. And I got most of my cases from teaching in schools. So when I show parents how to watch their kids online, when I show students how not to be victimized and how to report it, they come to me and I take over their accounts. I become them. And we see where the predator wants to take it. Usually it's for a sexual encounter. So now what I do, after I did a TED Talk, a TEDx in 2018, and that went viral. And I was traveling all over the country teaching in the schools. And my bosses came to me and said, either you're going to do our thing or you're going to do your thing. What do you want to do? And I said, I think I'm going to do my thing. I think it's time. So I retired. And now I'm in schools across the country. And my message to kids is no one has the right to make you feel bad about yourself. And no one has the right to make you do something you know you shouldn't be doing. If you're sitting here watching me suffering in silence, you need to come to me. Because when it comes to social networking and gaming online, no one online is anonymous. I'm going to show you how we find the predators. Wow. And with that, I mentioned that probably 4 or 5 times throughout my hour and 15-minute presentation. And they come to me. And over this past school year in 21-22, I taught 90 classes across the country. And I had 20 kids come forward telling me that they were being victimized mostly by sextortion. So what I do is I teach in schools. I am one of the cyber trainers for the National Association of School Resource Officers. So I go to each state, whoever wants me, and I train them how to investigate cybercrime. Most recently, the Secret Service have come out with their 2021 threat assessment survey, which says that 70% of the school shooters over the last 20 years had posted what they wanted to do before they did it. So I have been going across the country. I've been in 10 different states so far this summer, teaching, identifying, and intercepting the school shooter through something what we call leakage. And schools and law enforcement take this class together. You see, the problem is that the school, when they got a threat, they didn't know what information to ask for. Local law enforcement, if they don't have training in cybercrime, they'll just say, oh, we'll just wait and see what happens. And that's what happened in Parkland. That's what happened in Michigan. That's what happened all over the country. So what I do is I show the school administration, and I show law enforcement and SROs exactly what this is and how to get it. At the end, on the second day, is just for law enforcement, we are executing 3 search warrants. A search warrant on the poster's home for weapons, on their social media for their intent, and on their cell phones for who are they communicating with to do this school shooting. And so when we do those 3 things, our goal and our mission is to make this kid and get them the mental health help they need before a shooting happens. And we can do that. We can stop school shootings, no problem.
Yeah. Can you talk about the the tech talk that parents need to have with their kids?
Sure. So basically it's 2 things. So when I start my parent class, and we do our parent class in Spanish, English, and Polish. And in Chicago, we have a big Polish population, so we have to address them. The fact of the matter is that parents are responsible for their children. They're not only responsible for their food, their clothing, their shelter, and education, they too are responsible for their technology. You see, when a kid gets a cell phone, they don't own that cell phone until they're 18. I don't care if Nanu, Nonu, Grandma, Grandpa, Tia, Tiu bought them that new iPhone 13 for their birthday. They don't own it. I don't care if they cut grass all summer, babysat all winter, and bought it with their own money. They don't own it. It's the parent or the guardian that allows them to have it or not. The second thing that parents need to understand, you see, parents suffer from a disease, a deadly disease that we call the NMK syndrome. Very deadly. Not my kid. When parents start saying, my kid would never, that's when problems happen. So what I tell parents is that there is no such thing as privacy for children because they can't handle what goes on social media. It is a medically proven fact that the frontal cortex of their decision-making brain can't handle with all the scams and the catfishing going on social media and gaming platforms. That is why parents are responsible for their children. So I'll give you an example. So when I teach 4th and 5th graders, right, across the country, how old are they? Do you know?
12, 13?
They're like 9 to 11 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when I ask them, how many have a Snapchat? Yeah. How many have an Instagram? Yeah. How many have TikTok? Yeah. So 80% of them will have these. Well, they're not supposed to have them because you have to be 13 in order to have a social network. You have to be 13. Okay. So here's what happens. They whine and they whine and they whine to their parents or their guardian, right? I want a TikTok because everybody else has one and they're all talking about it. Love, shut up. And they
Guilty.
go, rah, 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 right? And the parents give in. They're like, yes, I can have a Snapchat. So let's face it. Our kids are not the best mathematicians in the world, right? Probably because core math, but anyways. What happens is they're like, oh, wait, I got to put my date of birth in. I was born in 2012. Do I go up with my date of birth or do I go down my date of birth to be 13? Oh, heck with it. I'm just going to put 2000. That'll get me in because they don't want to figure it out.
Yeah.
So then what happens is when they put their date of birth as 2000, how old are they today?
22.
22. So now I have a bunch of 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds posing as 22-year-olds. Who do you think is going to come talk to them? Adults, because they're 22. Who do you think is going to send them naked pictures? Adults, because they're 22. Who do you think is going to ask them to manufacture nudes and child pornography? Adults, because they're 22. And this is the problem that parents have And they don't realize because they suffer from the NMK syndrome, my kid would never do that. It's not about your kid. It's about everyone else going to get your kid because you are not guiding and directing them. So last year, I am on the BARC team. And so BARC is a monitoring software, and I am on their evaluation and review team. So we did a documentary last year called Childhood 2.0. Childhood 2.0. It's in YouTube. It's free. It's an hour and a half. And basically what it shows is what elementary, junior high, and high school students are doing behind their parents' backs. And I use this to show parents how to have a technology talk with their kids. So this technology talk, I want parents and the guardians to watch Childhood 2.0 by themselves. And if they think their kid can handle the content, watch it with them. And when you watch it with them, be able to pause it and ask them questions. Now, when you pause it and ask them a question, it's not, you don't do this, do you? What do you think? What answer are you going to get? No, never.
Oh, not
No,
me.
not me.
Mm-hmm.
The appropriate question is, what do you know about this? And do you know anybody that's involved in this? And they'll go blah, 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 blah. And so these are the nuances that I tell parents on how to watch their kids. One of the biggest ones is parents many times allow their children to charge their devices in their rooms at night, and that's when they'll get victimized. When you allow a child to bring their device in their rooms at night, you're sleeping as a parent. They shut the door so you can't hear them. There's no need to talk. It's typing, reading, and performing. And that's when they get victimized.
Wow, you have over 2.9 million views on this documentary.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, please, Childhood 2.0, Social Media Dangers Documentary. BARC is the name of the company. Oh my goodness. Wow, I cannot wait to watch this. I have a 5 and 7-year-old, 2 little boys. So
Okay.
and I have nieces and
And those
nephews
look
all.
cute.
So thank you.
Yeah.
So this is really important. I am a stickler when it comes to the iPads and the phones, but they want it because all their friends have it. And I'm guilty. I give it to them at times, not as much anymore, but I still do. And you know, you're right. You don't think about who's on the other side.
What drives me crazy is that when I'm out to a nice dinner with my family,
no,
and I see 2 young kids with their iPads and their headphones on, my wife gets very upset at me, and I cannot not say something.
I agree.
And I'll stop by the dinner table and say, it looks like you guys are having a great conversation tonight. And I walk by. One time I took a picture. To use in my presentation. And the father, the husband, caught me. And he's like, excuse me, are you taking pictures of us? I said, yes, I'm sorry. I'm a cybercrimes detective and I teach in schools all over the country. I just want to show parents what not to do when you're at dinner. And then I left.
Good. Well, hopefully that taught that parents that I don't allow that as well, but you see it all the time,
Yes,
constantly.
all the time.
They're not a part of any conversation. They're not a part of any life. And how is that going to affect them mentally and psychologically?
What other time do you have to socialize your child by your guidance? When the waiter comes and says, what would the little miss like to drink? What do they have, Mom? Well, they have milk. You can have juice. You can have pop just today. Are you going to have water or what? Can you tell them? No, tell the man what you want. Tell the man what you want.
Yeah, I make them
Yes.
both order.
That is good parenting.
Yes, I make them order. Eye contact. My biggest thing is eye contact. Always say hello, greet everyone. I got tears in
their
my
hand,
eyes.
right?
Yeah.
Teach them how to shake someone's hand.
I try. No one's good,
Yeah.
but you try
to
teach them the social graces and just standard what I think we would think is just normal, but these children today are not learning this, and their parents are also the ones on the phones too at the dinner table. Let's be honest.
And
You monkey see, monkey do.
Right. And just because technology exists doesn't mean you have to use it, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the things our parents told us when we left the house? Like,
make sure you have clean underwear on in case you get into
clean
an accident.
underwear. Make sure you have quarters in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
Don't take rides from strangers.
Beware of your
Don't talk
surroundings.
to strangers. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't talk to strangers. When the light comes on, your ass better be home, right?
Mhm.
Don't get in a stranger's car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff. But I have numerous parents that put their kids in Ubers because they're too busy to pick their kids up.
Wow.
Do you know how many Uber drivers are molesting their rides? And it's usually not the driver listed in the app. It's usually a cousin that just got out of prison sometimes. And they're sharing the
Really?
license. But yet I have parents putting their 13-year-olds in an Uber.
Wow.
Absolutely
How-
ridiculous. Some of my Catholic schools actually send notices home that say, we will not put your child in an Uber, so don't even think about sending one.
Good. Yeah, how bad is, how big is that problem?
Oh, it's major, especially in major cities. Because, what did we do when we were kids, right? The neighbor took us, we carpooled, there was a mom who didn't work, she took us, or Aunt Sally took us, but parents are like, no, he's got to get to practice and I'm too busy. Well, you know what? I don't know any kid that lost a scholarship for missing one practice. If there's no ride, guess what? They don't go.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yep. Yeah.
Just because the technology exists doesn't mean you have to use it.
And we can have 5 more minutes left here in the show. So in the last 5 minutes, I still want to get to some more about, some tips to us parents at home watching what we could do, and to our family, our friends, to try to prevent these predators. I mean, is there any other suggestions that you could give us today?
Yeah, so I have an online class that parents can take, actually. It's called cyberparenting-101.com, cyberparenting-101.com. You can also go to my website at besureconsulting.com, BESURE consulting.com, and they can get in touch with me there, and we can bring the training right to your schools if you'd like.
Wow, cool. Was it cyber parenting?
Cyberparenting-101.com is the online class.
Oh, okay.
And then
And
Be
then-
Sure Consulting.
Yeah, and then
.com?
it's BeSure, BESURE consulting.com if they want to schedule something for their school.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Let me see. I wanted to ask you one more thing, and the train went through the station. If it comes.
Well, in your notes, you Carlene, you were going to ask me about my history of how I was able to recover from some of the things that I've seen.
Yeah. Very great question. Because I know
Did you want to go there?
Yes, please. Carlene was
Okay.
mentioning that she's seen a lot of the images and video footage and how disturbing it is. But I can only imagine, if you're doing this on a daily basis, how that affects you. How do you separate that?
So the third thing that I do, besides training law enforcement, teaching in schools, is that I work for a first responder treatment center that I put together, and it's in Delray Beach, Florida. It's called Transformations, a Help for Our Heroes program. And I did this in 2018. They asked me down there, and they wanted to put together just a first responder, just for us. Just for firefighters, just for law enforcement, detectives, corrections, and prosecutors. So, arresting over 300 predators. I've seen a lot of child pornography, and it was making my life go south. I was losing my relationship with my wife, with my kids, with the people around me. Nobody wanted to be around me because I felt entitled. I was very loud, and so I went to the Department of Justice. Has a program called SHIFT, SHIFT. Supporting heroes, I think in forensic technology, something like that. And this is a wellness seminar that we have to go to. And they put up all these red flags. I checked every red flag. Aggressive, entitled, short-tempered, driving aggressively, being loud. I checked all of them. And those were mental health signs that the child pornography, the SISM, or talking like a 13-year-old to a predator was starting to creep into your life. Now, one of my friends, one of my partners had to go to a mental institution as a result of what he saw. I had another person that I did cases with in another county, and he actually started molesting his own child, and he got 25 years in prison. And so how it affects is just unbelievable. So one time my wife had recorded one of my rages, and I said, all right, let's go. And she goes, no. She goes, this is not the man I married. And I don't know where he went, but he better come back. And so right then and there, I decided I was going to go to treatment. And so I went into treatment for about 6 weeks. I was seeing someone. I went through 3 therapists because The first two only wanted to know what I did. They like to catch a predator, and they were just asking me all kinds of stupid questions about my job, not about me. And finally, I found one whose husband was an undercover narcotics officer, and she got it. And at the end of my 6 months, she says, now the rest of your 6 months, you have to stop doing child exploitation. I'm like, stop doing it. I said, I'm the only one who does it. This is my reputation, is my life. She goes, you have to stop. Clean your soul for at least 6 months, and then we'll come back to it. I'm like, all right. So I talked to my bosses at Naperville PD, and they were my SWAT commanders. So we were really tight, and I told them, and they were like, whatever you got to do. And they were very understanding, and they're like, well, you can still do the cyberbullying, the hacking, and threats and all that stuff. I said, yeah, of course. And so I did that, and it saved my life.
I commend you on sharing that experience with us, being so open about that in your most vulnerable
it's so
time.
important
Thank you.
because we're humans, you know what I mean? And it's okay not to be okay, but you just have to be able to raise your hand. And my wife has saved my life so many times, not even funny. And she's always like, no, I don't think you should do that. And so I usually listen to her, and I turn out okay. So now I have my older son's a firefighter paramedic, and my younger son just became a police officer. Yeah, they're in the same town.
Yeah, you have that on your, you had on your LinkedIn.
Congratulations. So Detective Rich Wistocki, one more time, tell us your website, beshoreconsulting.com, and we can find out more about the class there as well.
Yep. BESURE consulting.com. You can email me, Rich Wistocki, WISTOCKI at beshoreconsulting.com.
I assume you're not on social media because of what you do, or
oh no,
are
I'm
you?
all over social media.
Oh, you are? Okay, I wasn't sure.
I've been doxxed. I've been hacked. I've been.
Me too.
I've arrested so many hackers in my career. They had to buy me.
Wow.
So many LifeLock for my whole family because of it, and it's just.
Well,
crazy.
thank you so much, and Reverend, how did you want to sum up today?
Well, I spoke about child sex trafficking, and Rich spoke about sextortion. So, this program is on Roku, and it's on demand. So if you aren't able to see it, live now, please watch this. Parents and kids, watch it together. And then go to Rich's site, Child 2.0 Cyber Parenting. You can give that information. But anyway, and I mentioned that Amigo was not a good site for kids to be on.
No. Yeah.
So anyway, and I am the Reverend Carlene Appel. I own New Day Pastoral Counseling Services. I provide all types of counseling. I specialize in trauma and also dementia, compassion fatigue, grief. So my passion is trauma, PTSD, and my seniors. I love my seniors.
And your website, New Day.
Yeah, I'm at New Day Pastoral Counseling Services, www.newdaypcs.org. And Rev C. Appel, that's REVCAPPEL, because the dictionary spells apple wrong.
Yep, of course they do.
At newdaypcs.org. And thank you so much, Rich. I really appreciate you coming on.
We do. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hopefully speaking again. And thank you for
anytime.
Both enlightening us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.